Leah, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to have you on, and we're going to be talking about the Za'atari Refugee Camp and the Coaching for Life program principally. But with the Conti Cup final coming this weekend, Arsenal men getting ready to play Manchester City and a huge run in, I just thought we could start by asking, as someone who's been around the club for so long, how exciting is this moment in the club when you get to play in front of 60,000 at the Emirates and the men are competing for Champions League and Premier League honors? How exciting is it around the club right now?
Oh, it's a fantastic place to be at the minute. Very lucky to call this my place of work. And I think Martin, I saw him speak on it the other day. He said he's never really felt anything like this at a club before. And I think sometimes you're lucky, just you hit that sort of sweet spot across all areas, and everyone feels like they're moving in the same direction, which, like I say, doesn't come around often. So normally you only realise when you reflect. And I'm glad that everybody at the club at the minute is very present with it. So that we know what's going on now and we appreciate it at the time as well.
Yeah, well said. When we do our Arsenal Women's Focus podcast, we title it One Club because it really does feel very much like one club to us as supporters right now. Does it feel the same way to you inside the club?
Yeah, it does. We've had our voices heard, in recent years, but just in terms of the women's game as needs and is growing at a rate that none of us expected. So the fact that they've listened to us and seen what we wanted to achieve here as well is great. And like I say, we're all building. The thing I like about being at Arsenal is that it's competing in the present, but building for the future constantly. And that's what it feels like.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time, and you had the chance to do something in the last year that I got to do as well, which is head to Jordan and go to the Za'atari Refugee Camp to see the work being done by the Coaching for Life program. Last year, we had a fundraiser where this community was remarkable in what they did, raising hundreds of thousands of pounds for that program. And I think it's such a great time to update everybody on what's happening there. But one of the things that I think is really interesting is how reality bumps up against expectation when you get to go and do something like this. So just before we dive into some of the details of your experience with the refugee camp overall, I mean, over 80,000 people, over half of them children, refugees from the war in Syria who have been through so many terrible experiences and faced so many challenges. How did the camp and life in the camp maybe differ from your expectations when you got there?
I think if you think about what you see on the news, or you have, that's all your perception is, because none of us have really, not many people have been over there or experienced it in that way. I think when I arrived, it just took me aback a bit that it seemed so. On one hand, you've got all these dreamers and these kids that see their future and want a better future for themselves, and the parents that are trying to make it happen. But at the same time, it felt too normal to me. It felt like that it was actually a city, and that this is what we should expect, and these are the conditions that we should sort of expect people to live in. It felt too normal for me when I arrived. That really sort of threw me, and upset me a
I
little
bet
bit.
if I listened to my audio from last year, I said the exact same thing. It's stunning how much this is just normal life for
Yeah.
people in that camp. And maybe it's a criticism of the global community that we're allowing that to become normal life for so many people and for so many children. But there was also something slightly reassuring to me in the sense that you go and you build up this expectation of destitution and misery, and you see people making a life and life finding a way. And so one of the things that I was struck by was the generosity and kindness of the people. And I know that's often a cliche. People say everywhere they go, but I really was touched by it. I'm curious what your initial experience was with the people and if it was sort of the same kind of reaction that you were met with.
Yeah, well, like you say, the best bit was knowing that all of those people still see a future outside of the camp, no matter how normal it felt. The ones that I interacted with, but I think there's a really great piece going on at the minute, which is the gender transformative approach, which is that's the next phase of the program, so to speak. But I felt so welcomed, and I felt like I could really. I'd been to Indonesia in 2018, I think, and seen the program working there. Obviously, very different circumstances, but this was a real community feel, and the way that I was welcomed in, I couldn't believe it, because sometimes you don't know what to expect. I had no idea what to expect. I've never walked into a refugee camp before, but they were incredible to me, the hospitality they shown, and also That I love how vocal they are. I think they say things that we don't in the worlds that we live in. We hold our cards close to our chest, or we don't say nice things enough. And the way they speak, and how they express their appreciation of me, going, it's hard because I'm constantly saying, this is you're the blessing in this situation, kind of thing.
Yeah, but the connection is palpable, and I think that's something that I really wanted to ask you about because I obviously came to Arsenal midway through my life. Not growing up by London and not having the chance to be as connected to the club, but it's been such an important part of your life for most of your life, and then to go somewhere so far away to such different conditions. How moving is it to realize what Arsenal and what North London means to these kids who are refugees from Syria living on the Syrian Jordanian border? For someone like you who's so connected to the club, was it really moving to see young people all the way at this part of the world feel so close to North London and Arsenal?
Honestly, it it broke my heart in a way because it was so pure, like pure.
Yeah, yeah.
And genuine, their love for Arsenal, and how connected they do feel to it. I had this conversation with people that I went with, and when I came back, when I was reflecting on it, but you genuinely, you take a football club halfway across the world, and you still have the exact same feeling that I have when I talk about Arsenal here, or when I visit the community hub here. Like it's the I don't think you. I mean, most football fans would say this about their clubs, I presume. But when you play for Arsenal, or you're a fan of Arsenal, or you just live in the community, you understand that it's just a bit different, and it has always felt different to me. And like I say, maybe everyone else thinks that about their own situations, but the way Arsenal have always done things and been such a community sort of based club, the fact that you can feel it when you get over there just honestly blew my mind, because you don't know. I don't know if we hand out kit, or but I was so happy to see that. Yeah, they almost, the way they talk about Arsenal is with love. It's not just as a this is a partner that comes in. There's lots of partners in the camp. There's lots of things going on, but the way they talk about Arsenal, yeah, they feel a part of it, which is really important to me, because we don't just go there to drop in and leave. We go there to give them a sense of belonging.
See, I think you just touched on something critical, right? Because it's easy to get people to focus on a tragedy that's urgent. It's easy to get people to focus on the story of the moment. What's hard is to get people to keep caring and keep caring about the same group of people. But these are children. And the one thing, when you make a promise to children, you have to keep it. I have 2 young daughters.
Yeah,
I also have a brand new puppy. So if I look exhausted, that's my excuse. And when you make a promise to them, the most important thing is that you keep it. And so I feel such a responsibility, having been there and seen the impact, to make sure that we as a community continue to live up to the promise we set and continue to make the impact that we're making. And so I really wanted to just touch on impact and the impact of coaching for life in particular. I am not a footballer, as is probably evident looking at me. You are.
not
For
so
someone
that's
who's
your words, not mine. Not
and
mine.
quite valid. So as someone who's built your life around the game, what's it like to go there and see these young children, and especially the young girls, because now the program has achieved gender parity, which is a remarkable achievement, to see what football can do in terms of transforming them when they face a life of potential child marriage or forced labor, to develop these skills, these life skills, through a game that you've been connected to your whole life,
Yeah,
and how that's transforming their existence in the camp.
that's the thing I love about it most. I think that football, we all know, and I don't think anyone can deny that football just has this power to bring people together in a way that not many other things do. The way that I'm proud to be involved in football, and also, and you'll have experienced this. I almost feel a sense of guilt when I went, because I got so much out of going there in terms of, for me.
Yep.
And obviously we go there, and my presence there was to hopefully inspire, or encourage the kids to stay on that path, and to know that it's worth it, and to demonstrate to especially the young girls, that I exist, not me, but in my role as a female footballer, but what they offered to me, and how I look on my life because of that experience. Because you see the appreciation, you see the love of the game, you see the impact that it has on their personality, on their daily lives, just from this one little skill. But that's what I love about the program, because when you say about trying to keep people focused on on a tragic situation and trying to keep their attention and trying to keep the investment there. I think the fact that there's a longevity to the program, and it's about giving them responsibility. They really feel like they not only are they involved in the program, but they have an input. They can influence how that experience is for them, and then that longevity, I think, is worth buying into, because I'd like to know that especially if I was to donate, obviously we've been over there, but I'd want to know that something was actually having an impact on people's lives, and the difference that you see in these women, and even hearing the coaches' stories about, oh, this young girl came to us like this, and now look at her, and especially listening to the parents. That's something I didn't do in Indonesia. Again, very different circumstances, but the same program essentially, and listening to the parents and how they speak about these children, and how their opinion on football has changed. And it's not just a silly little game. It can have such an impact on people. I mean, as if I needed sort of reminding, but the feeling that I have, even when I am here now, is it's just incredible, because I think the game's an incredible thing.
It's a place that stays with you. I mean, there's no question about that. It has stayed with me. And, in terms of the impact, that just the staggering juxtaposition when you go into one of these coaching for life facilities and you hear laughter, little kid laughter, and you see playtime, and you see these classes taking place and smiles on faces. And just outside the sort of fences around these facilities, you see young people going off to work. You see young people in conditions that young people should never have to be in. And it makes you appreciate just how important the sanctuary of these facilities are, the work they do with these kids, and how many more kids that they still need to be able to reach through expansion of the program. But, as you got to be there, I assume you had a chance to speak to a few of the program participants. One of the things that strikes me, and everybody there is keenly aware of this, the goal isn't for Western people to come and be saviors to the people in the Za'atari camp. The goal is, of course, to develop skills within the people in the camp that can then be passed down to others. And they do that through the coaching program. So we have these CDP coaches, right? Coaching development program coaches from Arsenal in the community, who go there and help train up the coaches there, the local coaches, who can then coach other refugees in the camp. And I'm curious what your thought was on that approach specifically, of bringing some ideas from North London to Zaatari, empowering the people in Zaatari to then deliver the program to their own people too, and how that's more self-sustainable to do it that way.
That's what I love about it. I think that's the most incredible thing about it, because again, what do we focus on in a scenario like this? We always look at children and what children need, because we have to, because they're the ones most in need. But the opportunity for them to grow up, firstly, and have something, because the reality is we don't know how long that camp will stay in its form. We don't know how, they weren't meant to be there this long. So we don't know how things play out, and they have the opportunity. It gives them a vision. It gives them a goal to grow up, because like I said, the onus is on them. We will come to help and to facilitate your learning. But ultimately you're affecting adults, existing adults in the camp who get taught. And, some of them already have those skills. They're just, we're presenting it in a way that we think is really beneficial, and the way they buy into it. But yeah, I just think that's the most incredible. That's what I love about it. That's why I think it's so incredible, because it's easy when you're in London. It's easy when you live in Finsbury Park to pop down every week to a session and constantly have the support of the people around you. But we can't be, and we shouldn't be out there all the time. Like you said, that's not the purpose of it. It's to give that responsibility, that confidence to those people who have had everything taken away from them.
Yeah, well said. I got the chance to watch some of the boys playing, some of the girls playing as well, and to see the transformation in them when they step on that pitch, and the incredible intensity with which they take to the task of playing the game and learning the game, absorbing the game, the competitiveness, but also the camaraderie. And I think we take for granted having friends. I think obviously you have a privileged position where you're adored by millions. You have so many people that would love to be close to you, but as I think everybody knows, it can still be difficult to make those meaningful relationships, those relationships that stay with you for life. No matter how many people are around you or in your orbit, it's those really close relationships that help you succeed in life. Maybe a parent, maybe a partner, and maybe a dear friend. In the camp, those relationships are nearly impossible to form for a variety of reasons. And one of the things that I heard from the girls in particular was the importance of making a friend, of having someone that could be a trusted ally, that could be a support to them outside of the family structure, which sometimes isn't the safest place for them.
Yeah.
That was something I really took away as important from the gender parity. The resiliency skills include making friendships and bonding to people,
Yeah.
especially for children that grew up having bonds ripped away from them as refugees. So that was sort of my experience. Is that similar to something you took away? And in particular with the girls that you saw, what were the things that stuck with you in terms of the skill sets that they were developing through the program?
Yeah, I think on that point, the thing I'll miss most when I retire or when I'm not a footballer anymore is the fact that I get gifted every year. I get gifted 21, 22 friends, and
Mm.
I'm not as close to some as I am to others, but all of them, and, obviously you hope that you have a good team environment, but all of them offer me a place of safety and a place of comfort. And a lot of us will always speak on the toughest times that we've been through in our lives and how our team brings us through that. It's the same for those kids, that they go to the
Yeah.
sessions and they find these like-minded people, or whatever it is that they connect on, or they just have a great time with. But I think when I sat in the girls' session, and obviously, like you said, I'm listening to the issues that they face, which is child marriage, or the fear of that situation, or they can't actually attend football. They're scared to be stopped going because of the lack of safety in terms of getting there, or all of these different things. Then you sit next to, and you're trying to voice these things, but you're the minority, and you don't have the strongest voice because of history and the way that the world works. And then all of a sudden you're sat next to a young girl who looks like you, so you can relate, and you have maybe similar issues, and they give each other confidence. And I think that's what makes us stronger. And then they go to, the boys sessions, and we're teaching them about the girls' issues, to be
Yep.
empathetic. Is that the
Mm-hmm.
right word? To
That
that
is.
situation, and to be conscious of that, to then not put more barriers in their way. Because the girls want to fight together. And I don't like saying the word fight, but they want to change their circumstances. They want the opportunities that they think they now deserve, because of the confidence that they've picked up, because of this skill set training on offer. And I
Yeah.
just think it's such a beautiful thing to listen to people talk about it in that way, because here we can get caught up in winning or losing football, but it's not about that, And when we all look back in years to come at our time involved in these sorts of things, what will we look back on? And I know that I'll look back on the friendships and the times I had and what it offered me as a person, rather than counting how many trophies we've won on our hands.
Yeah, both are nice, but yeah, certainly.
Yeah,
Uh,
we'd like to have both, but you get my
yes,
point.
I certainly do. And one of the most moving things I experienced, Leah, I was in a session with moms and daughters. And I think what we fail to appreciate is the virtuous circle of helping these young people at this time, and how that will impact future generations as well. Because there was a mom, this is one of the bravest things I've heard, because she's sharing this in her community. Granted, there were no men in the session, but she said, um, I was married as a child. I had no say in it. I knew I didn't want to do it. I knew that's not what I wanted for my life. I didn't have the ability to express myself, to stand up for myself, to defend myself. I found my daughter in the same situation, but because of this program, she stood up to me. She stood up to the people around her. She had a voice to say, this is not what I want for my life. She was not then married off at that age. She stayed out of that child marriage. She did stay in school. Now that's powerful for that young person,
Yeah.
but that's also going to empower the next generation, who will have a role model and a mentor, whether she becomes a mom or just a trusted ally or whatever the case may be. So I do want to be cognizant of your time and start to wrap, but that was an especially moving thing for me. And I think, as you saw the girls, especially the ones at the start of the program versus the ones that have been in it, are you able to see that progression? Because I found it palpable just watching the way they were progressing through the program.
The conversations, I've only ever had video calls before going over there, and the conversations that I used to have with the girls, and or have had with the girls, and they've all always had dreams, which I just think is the most incredible thing. Because if I spoke to my friends and I said, what do you want to be when you're older, they wouldn't have given, I don't know, or because they don't have to think about it, because there's so many opportunities. They'll fall into something if nothing figures itself out. Whereas these girls want to be lawyers, and they want to be doctors, and they have all these dreams, and it scares me, because I don't want them to be ever disappointed because of the circumstances that the world presents for them. But the difference in the conversation that I had when I sat with them, I felt like I was sitting with a group of young women, and that to me, in an environment like that where they haven't been encouraged to step outside of the norm or to offer much more than what they were believed, was the right thing. But I sat in a parent session, like I said, and on one hand, I've got a father telling me that he's so happy that he has these like young independent women as daughters, and he doesn't want to. He has to make a choice. Do we stay here, or do we try and leave? And the reality is, and this is where it makes me so sad, because the reality of that, we love to stay away from this conversation, but that is getting on a boat, trying to cross a border, a very, very dangerous route to go down. But he's saying to me, there's no opportunity for them here. What's the point in them being and finding this newfound sort of freedom and confidence if there's nowhere for them to use it? And then in the same breath, he's sort of joking, saying, I wish my wife had been to these sessions when she was younger. And he's laughing and he's joking about it, but he's basically saying the difference I see in my daughters after 1-2 years is incredible. And then, like you say, it's impacted him, will impact future generations, it impacts the people around him. It just spreads like wildfire if it's the right message. So I feel proud of them. Like when I was sat with the girls, I was like, you have so much to be proud of. And like I say, they show their appreciation for, say, me turning up, and I'm like, you have no idea how inspirational you all are sat there.
Yeah. And you think about the chain of events, right? Which is, these kids are not in school anymore. They're in child labor. They're heading toward child marriage. They get into a coaching for life program. They develop friendships and allies and kinships and life skills, and they get back into school and they avoid child labor and child marriage. And by going back to school, they develop skills that make them someone who can go into a community and contribute and be ready to have a life that isn't just perpetuating the refugee lifestyle inside the Za'atari camp. That starts by getting these kids into this program. And I just think, now that we're there, now that Arsenal is there, North London is there making this impact, it's incumbent upon us to stay there and live up to the promise we've made for these kids. So
100%. We are beyond a football club. We have to be beyond a football club because we have this impact. Once you realize you have that impact, you have to use it. And that's the role that we can play in their lives.
Couldn't agree more. I can't thank you enough for your time. I know we've run slightly over, but it's just brilliant to listen to you share your experience.
All day. It's hard.
I could as well. Yeah, I'm just so appreciative. So Leah, thank you, and I think you would certainly echo the sentiment that we hope everybody listening, if they're able to, can give to the cause and understand that they're making a huge impact. So Leah, thanks so much for coming on.
No, thank you, and I do. I think it's so important that not everyone can go over to the camp, but we can all have our own impact in our own way.